everyone. Welcome to another weekly speaker series. I'm Coraly, Rosario. I'm a UX designer in games, and today we have Shirley McPhaul with us. Did I say that right?
You did. Good
Yes.
job.
Yay. Um, and today we are going to be talking about Animal Crossing New Horizons. I am sure pretty much most people have either heard of it, the majority have probably played it. But we're just gonna do a game breakdown of Animal Crossing to really understand like what is working for the game, what designs the creators put together that really like just hone in on everything that makes this game super special. Before that, Shirley, can you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, indeed. Um, Hi, everyone. My name is Shirley McPhaul. I am currently a professor at the University of Puerto Rico at an Atlantic University College. I teach. I teach mostly what I teach depends on the institution where I'm at. At the UPR, I teach literature and popular culture, specifically medieval literature. But in Atlantic, I'm teaching video game concepts and design, English, and other humanities courses. Also, video game narrative. I've been playing Animal Crossing for about 4 weeks now, more or less, sort of, kind of, and I have a love hate relationship with the game.
And for reference for the people who are joining us now, so Shirley, we have two different perspectives in the room today. Shirley has been playing the game for a while. She knows the game inside and out. I have not played the game. I know very little about it. So I will be kind of like approaching it at a from a view of almost an outsider, but someone who actually really appreciates what is working in this game and just how it's enthralled the community. And we do apologize a little bit for the background noise. We're both home. My dog is kind of like cries sometimes. She has a dog in the background. That's okay. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not my dog though. In my defense, so there's really literally nothing I can do about it.
So for starters, I guess for those who don't know what Animal Crossing is, Shirley, can you talk to us a little bit about what is Animal Crossing?
Thought you'd never ask. Um, so Animal Crossing first came out back in 2001 in Japan, originally for the Nintendo 64. And then Nintendo apparently realized what a great game it was that they decided to relaunch it for the GameCube, and then it came out for the GameCube here in the States. An important aspect about Animal Crossing that really set it apart from the rest of the games at the moment, and it kind of still does, is the fact that Animal Crossing came into the market really taking advantage of the clock feature in the Nintendo 64, right? So they were able to have a game that actually passed in the same way that time passes in the real world. And that back then was huge. So that is something very, very innovative that was brought into the video game scene through Animal Crossing. So I think there's a total of 5 Animal Crossings. There's the original one. I don't remember if Wild World is the original one, if it's
I think it
second
is.
one. Yeah, I think it's the Animal Crossing from Japan. Then that was not called Animal Crossing. I think it had a different name. Then Wild World. Then City Folk came out. Then there is New Leaf, which
Came out, I think, like 2 or 3 years ago.
yes. Yes. And then there is Pocket Camp, which I would show you that I have my phone, but I'm not gonna do that. So so this is the 5th game from the Animal Crossing franchise that Nintendo comes up with. And so far so good. I mean, it has all the the small beautiful things that make Animal Crossing so appealing, and it also adds a little bit more another like different elements, right? I don't know if you want to take over, Coraly.
I mean, let's talk a little bit first about like the actual gameplay itself. Like, what is
Okay.
it that makes Animal Crossing compared to Skyrim or Fortnite or these other types of games?
Well, I would, if I had to, like categorize Animal Crossing within a genre, I would say that it's a village simulation, right? So the player comes in to inhabit a space and share it with other creatures. And even though it's not as feature filled as something like SimCity or other types of simulators like Roller Coaster Tycoon, like you can't, right, you can't put the entire village together. It does give you enough options for it to be an actual simulator, and also the fact that you get to talk with the villagers and design the environment. Now the gameplay itself, and this is kind of like where my love hate relationship with this game comes in. The game itself, the mechanics, the core mechanics of the game are really boring, in my opinion. uh, they're essentially, the game is about you going in and gathering materials, right, for crafting, or for crafting, or crafting, right? And it's in order to get these items, or you can also try to sell things in order to get bells so you can purchase more items. So it's also this game that's very heavy on collecting, which there are types of gamers out there that love collecting. I mean, collecting is a
There's
huge thing. That's why Pokemon, right? It's one of the reasons why Pokemon is such a huge thing, because we as human beings, we love collecting things.
yes,
We love.
and there's a whole player model around just people who love collecting, are completionists who really want all the bells and whistles and everything they can get from games. There's a whole player behavior model around that.
Yeah, it's like well, gamification really takes advantage of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
uh, and the game kind of like wants you to, so well, no, that's kind of like the gameplay, the core gameplay for the game, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
there is the narrative, which also really sucks. And i don't I don't think there's anyone out there who can convince
Well,
me otherwise.
I
I
mean,
mean,
from what I've seen so far, it sounds like you have a lot of debt with this raccoon that
no,
is
it's
just constantly saying,
insane.
"When you gonna pay me my money?"
Like Tom Nook. Okay, first off, there's also this something to be said about colonialism, and like this island centered kind of like theme going on here, right? Like first, we don't really know how Tom Nook came across these like deserted island. What if there was actually people here and he murdered them?
Oh my
You
god,
know, like we we don't know. The only thing we know is that
he has a lot of
there's
islands.
there's apparently a lot of islands, a bunch of them, right? And hold on, there's an ad. There's ad alert. Okay, there we
There
go.
we go.
So there's a bunch of islands, and Tom Nook has this dream of your island becoming like this huge tourist slash entertainment mecca sort of thing. So he starts bringing in people, and then you become the island leader and start making decisions, like important decisions, like where the buildings are going to go, where the bridges are going to be built, where the campsite is going to be. And
So it sounds like you basically become the HOA of this
yeah,
island.
yeah, you become the leader of the island, which is kind of like the role that you have in other games, right? So, and you were making all these decisions, but at the end of the day, Tom Nook is the one who's in charge. So I think it's interesting because from a narrative perspective, this narrative is actually Tom Nook's narrative, right? He's the central character. And in that sense, the player is playing a secondary character, which allows the player to build his or her own narrative around the whole Tom Nook wants to conquer the archipelago of wherever this game is actually
Of the
happening. We don't
southern
know,
and
right?
northern hemispheres. which is
Yes.
very broad.
Yeah, it's very big. Uh, and this narrative, unless you, of course, you over dramatize it, it really sucks. It's a really terrible narrative. Like, I feel like they could have done so much better. On the plus side, though, because the gamer or the player is a secondary character, that means that your reasons for being on the island are whatever you want them to be. And whatever you make of the island is whatever you, the player, choose to do. So it doesn't matter what narrative or what agenda Tom Nook might have or how much money you owe him, because at the end of the day, you still have to pay him back if you want all that precious
But from
storage space.
but from what I read earlier, like it's a very relaxed repayment plan. Like you just pay it back
Yeah, it is.
at your own time.
Yeah, it is. I've seen some TikToks, really funny TikToks of people like they make this little story where they're like, "Oh, I owe Tom Nook 1,000,000 bells, and here I am purchasing all these things," and suddenly Tom Nook shows up with a bat on his hand, like, "Where's
Where's
my
my money?
money?"
Oh, did you know Tom Nook was nominated as villain in 2003?
I mean, it makes sense. I'm telling you, he has there's a conspiracy. He's colonizing all these little islands and he's murdering people. The Yakuza are probably involved somehow. I am sure.
So before we dive a little deeper into kind of like the motivations and a lot of the gameplay aspects, I want to talk a little bit, just kind of sideline, the current situation that's going on right now with, COVID-19 and how this game kind of came out at a really almost like opportune time, and no one really planned this or expected this. It literally came out right as the states were locking down. Like I think the first state that locked down was Seattle, or the first city that locked down was Seattle and Washington, and then after that we just started seeing all the cities around the U.S. just locking down. So, can we just take a moment to talk, I guess, about that? Like,
Yeah,
do we
absolutely.
do we feel that like I want to say it led not only to the virality of the game, the fact that everyone is just in their homes all the time, unable to like actually talk to other people, actually do anything else, and all of a sudden this game just appears out of nowhere. It looks interesting. It looks nice. It looks from an outsider's perspective as a very easy game to play as well. And yeah, like what do you think?
Well, I think that Nintendo was so incredibly lucky because Animal Crossing does have their fan base, right? Uh, there are a lot of people who were really looking forward for this game to come out, and with good reason. The game is absolutely endearing. It's adorable. Even though I have issues with the gameplay and I think it's boring AF, I also think that the game does a lot of things right. And I'm not gonna, even though I hate the core mechanics, I'm not going to stop playing the game, right?
You are
But I
hooked.
also,
You are
I,
totally 100% hooked.
I am. Um, but I don't think that we can. It's deniable at any degree that the whole situation really helped Nintendo to sell this game, and it wasn't even on purpose. Like, it was a complete accident because this game came out, I think, March 20th is the date. So
Yeah, it was that same weekend. Like I remember I started working from home that Tuesday or a little bit before, like the week before that Tuesday. And then I saw that it came out that following weekend or something like that. So,
yeah,
yeah,
so
it's been
so
it's been a month or more.
the lockdown here in Puerto Rico started on March 16th, and right before the game came out. And when when the game came out, I have a lot of students that were really looking forward to getting their game, and they had ordered the collector's edition or whatever edition you would get from reserving it at Best Buy or Walmart, and they were really, really disappointed. because they couldn't go get it, right? But they still bought it digitally anyways. Like they're like, I already paid for it, but who cares? I'm just gonna purchase it again. And then I had, like, so you understand, my best friend got her copy of the game, and she got so hooked so fast, she actually gifted me the
A
game.
copy. Like, you're gonna play with me now.
Yes, because she was like, dude, you gotta play this game. And I'm like, dude, I'm broke. And she's like, dude, check your email. And I'm like, dude, what? And she's like, check your email. And I check my email, it's the game. And I started crying even. I love you, Carolina. Just saying. Anyways, the point is that this game came out just at the right time, where people, like, the whole thing had just started. People were looking for something to do, and this game was a godsend because it didn't just give us something to do. It is giving us so much more than just that, right? And the only way I can think of that this game can be, like, endearing is, if I had to describe this game in one single word, it would be just, it's endearing. It's wonderful. I still
It's
kind of hate it, but it's still wonderful.
I think one thing we talked about this earlier, but one thing I really do want to kind of hit on, with a lot of games, when they become like this popular or this viral or everything, usually people attribute it to some sort of escapism. However, I really feel like with this game, that isn't quite what's happening. Again, this game came out around the time where the lockdown happened for everybody. Everyone's in their homes. Routines are being completely disrupted. Literally, all you can do is be inside and do chores, and that's kind of it. On the one side, yes, being on a deserted island in the middle of nowhere is escapism, but it almost feels like this game, from what I've seen from it, is actually adding routines back into people's lives. It's letting them actually plan their days. It's letting them look forward to things again. And not even like extravagant things. It's really just like, okay, today I'm going to like check up on my trees and collect a bunch of fruit. Or I'm going to, try to see if I can get this type of specific flower on my island. Or just collect a bunch of fossils to like, or animals or whatever to put in the museum. Everything feels like very small interactions and very purposeful interactions. And could, like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think I love the fact that you use the word routine, right? Because that just hits the nail on the head in many levels. Like I mentioned before, like, the mechanics kind of suck, or the main mechanics, I think that the mechanics kind of suck because they are very, like, embedded into this routine, right? But at the same time, it's like Coraly says, that this routine is actually helpful for the time that we're living in. So I have a friend who's also playing the game, because of course he is. And the other day he was like, oh, you should come visit me to my island, but give me about half an hour so that I can complete my routine. And I'm like, what routine? What are you saying? He's like, yeah, like, I have to pick up the fruits, and I
I
have
have
to
to
look for
clean.
fossils. Yeah, I have to hit all the rocks to get all the materials, and then after I've done all that, you can come to my island visit. And I was like, okay. But that's kind of like the point, right? The game gives you a structure, and it's more than something to do. It's something to do that you know how to do it. You know exactly what you have to do, so there's no surprises. You know exactly what's going to happen, in what order is going to happen, and that is very comforting for us as
Especially
human.
right now.
Yeah, particularly right now. Um, because right now it's chaos. Right
Yeah.
now we don't know when we're gonna be able to go back to work. We don't know when we're gonna be able to go back to school for those who are still in school. We don't know. We know what's happening today,
Exactly.
and even that can get disrupted
Even minute,
really.
even minute by minute. A lot of
Yeah.
us are living minute by minute, knowing or not knowing like what's going to happen in the next hour or so.
Yes.
Like,
So this game allows you to have to gain back that control over something in your life. You have Animal Crossing, and you can count on Animal Crossing to not give you any heart wrenching surprises, right? It's gonna be the same Tom Nook, it's gonna be the same dialogue every single time. Every time you go to Blathers to turn in the insects or the fossils or the artwork, it's the exact same dialogue every single time. He says the same thing. And I have to admit, I really enjoy listening to him speak, because I can almost, and this is why this game is delightful, because I can almost understand some of the words he's saying. And to me personally, it's just very satisfying to listen to him talk and be able to almost like be like, oh, I think he said that word, or oh, I think he said that other word, and it's just, I don't know, it's just wonderful.
and just in
I
case, and I want to clarify something for those that are listening to us that haven't played Animal Crossing. No one in this game really verbally talks. Everything is through sounds, through music, through almost like if you've played The Sims, like Simlish, right? That was like the name of it.
Yeah, Simish.
Um, yes. It's kind of like that, and that's what she means by being able to understand them when they talk.
Yes, thank you for that clarification,
Yeah.
Coraly. And it's the same thing with all the other, all the other villagers, but with Blathers is particularly satisfying. I don't know why, but
Because you
also
always get so annoyed and so scared.
I don't know. It's just like, well, okay, sure. Um, and these villagers. Like, I'm looking at the other at the video. Oops, sorry about that. I'm looking at the video that we're playing, and if you pay attention to the villagers, when they're talking to you, they're so expressive, and that is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I have my villagers in my little island, and I have my villagers that I love and that I will never let go. And then there's those villagers that I'm like, yeah, I don't really care about. But the ones that I really love, they're my interactions with them are always very meaningful, right? They're very meaningful interactions, but they're meaningful to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's kind of like, because I mean, I didn't exactly choose all of my villagers. Some of them just appeared because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that I actually was like, oh, I want to keep you, and the ones that I've chosen are villagers that really that make me feel cherished, if that makes sense. It's really weird to be looking for that in a game, and it's even weirder that the game is actually able to deliver it. That is even weirder. But
That is very very rare to happen in a way that is very uplifting. Because yes,
yeah,
we get rewards from games for a job well done. We get the pats on the back. But this game, it seems it does something very different where it's almost like I mentioned it when we were talking before, kind of like when you're in kindergarten or first grade or elementary school, and the teacher is actively
encouraging you.
exactly to like do the best job you can, and when you do, it's like, yeah, you did it. That's awesome, and it's but none of it seems fake or forced. Like it feels like genuine, just like wanting you to be doing a good job and making you feel good for doing that good job. But yeah.
Yeah, like uh my favorite villagers right now are they're my favorite because of very specific interactions. So with Marcy, she's a pink kangaroo. Marcy made up a nickname for me, which is Butterbean. I think that's the most adorable thing ever. And whenever she calls me Butterbean, I'm like, I'm Butterbean. Then there is Fauna, which is a deer, a doe, I guess. And Fauna, she's just really nice. She likes watering my plants. So she like waters my plants all day, every day, and that's great. Then there is Marina, who is like an octopus, a pink octopus, who is extremely adorable, and she sings. So suddenly, the first time that I saw her singing, I teared up because it's the dumbest thing. I know. It's just really ridiculous. But I love to watch her sing. And she just starts singing and she's just like standing in the plaza and just singing her heart out. And I'm like, yes, girl, let me get your microphone. As soon as those raccoon kids, sell me one, if they ever bring one. But it's just those small interactions with the villagers that make me absolutely love this game. And it's precisely because those interactions with these villagers that are usually almost 100% of the time very meaningful. There are other villagers whose interactions I don't care about. Like, there are different types of personalities in the villagers, and like the personality type that I don't particularly are the jocks, because the jocks are always talking about exercising, and I'm like, sure. I mean, I used to be a gym rat at one point of my life, believe it or not, but I don't want this guy like telling me up my face all day that I have, like, reminding me that by the end the quarantine's over, I'm probably gonna have to, like, roll outside of my house or won't even fit through the door. Like, I don't want that reminder, thanks. But yeah, so the interactions with those type of characters are not nearly as meaningful as with the other ones. So I think that Nintendo did a really good job at having those villagers being able to interact with the player in meaningful ways, or ways that that make you stop and kind of go like, huh, that is really cute. For that reason, actually, is that I would argue that the experience of playing Animal Crossing, when you play it as you should, is more of a mindful, like, it's almost like a mindfulness practice, right? Play Animal Crossing. But it's interesting because mindfulness is usually about being present in your body. I don't know if any of you guys do meditation or mindfulness exercises. It's about, I'm here, I'm right now, breathing exercises, I'm within my body. But with Animal Crossing, it's kind of like the same thing, but instead of being aware of my body and my surroundings, I have this cognitive awareness within the game. Like, I am paying attention to the sounds, paying attention to the point where there is an insect. It's like, I don't remember what the name of the insect is, but the only way you're going to be able to capture this insect is if you're listening at the game, because it's like underground.
Being aware.
Yeah. So you need to be aware of the surroundings in order to be able to catch this insect.
But again, it's an awareness that is very purposeful. It's not something, because again, right now everyone's feeling sort of this fight or flight reaction to everything that's going on. So people are aware, but they're aware of what's going to happen next. Oh my God, is there a bear behind the bush? Is there something that's going to attack me? Whereas this sounds more just like, I am aware of the trees that are blowing, the sound that insect is making, when any sort of like singing that's happening around me. And it's kind of bringing you all back to the present rather than what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also there's, as I was talking about the insect that you find underground, there are actually other insects that you will not be able to capture if you're not paying attention. Like, some of your villagers get fleas, and the only way you'll notice that they have fleas is if you see the flea like jumping around their body, which is, they're really tiny, so you won't be able to see them. Or if you talk to them and they tell you like, oh, I'm so itchy, and then suddenly you see the flea and you use your net to capture the flea. And that when I realized that, to me that was like, wow. I mean, like, you really have
detail.
Yeah, it's the devil's in the details, right? It's just like that little tiny detail, that thing, which was surprising and kind of like breaks the whole routine thing. it's surprising in an endearing way. It's not. It just makes you aware that there are other things happening in the on the island that are what's the word that I'm looking for? Uh, I can't think of the word, so never mind. But there's also another insect that appears in kind of like that sneaky matter. It's like you need to place trash somewhere on the island, and I think ants and flies will come to the trash, and that's like the way that you capture these insects. So it's like that, those little tiny details that really make the game an amazing experience for me.
Um, I guess another thing, I want to talk a little bit more about the visual side of things for the game itself and how we feel that maybe the game designers really achieved like a sense, again, of meaningful and purposeful actions for the player to complete uh, through just their visuals. One thing that I think is really great about this game, and I think you agree with it, is just the fact that it feels so cozy and so just everything looks rounded, everything looks like it has like a felt sort of texture on it or some sort of fur texture on it, but not nothing that's going to be like harsh. Um, Everything kind of has like life to it, the trees, the grass, the ocean waves, the fact that the world itself you can only see up to a certain point, but then after that you see the sky and how blue it is or how it changes throughout the day, and how that camera view kind of encourages you to explore a little bit more, just like what is beyond that little bend, what is beyond that little curve. um, what I'm looking for, is it going to be there? um, but yeah, can we, I don't know, I guess talk about that a little.
Yeah, of course. So um the game is, of course, the aesthetic of the game is cute, like cuteness overload, uh and everything about the game is cute, right? um I think that the game, the characters, of course, the villagers are super cute. There are a few villagers that are not very cute, and oh my god, this is terrible because like we're gonna be talking more about the community a little bit later, but like there are people out there who are willing to pay big bucks for like very specific villagers, and when you look at the list of villagers, you see that these are like the prettiest looking villagers or the cutest looking villagers, and I'm like, oh my god, like what how, like I don't even know. It's not even about personality. It's just who is the
The
cutest.
aesthetic.
Like who is like the cutest. I mean, and I've seen islands where all the villagers are pink, for example. And I get that. Like I understand wanting to have your villagers match the aesthetic, the general aesthetic of your island. Uh but yeah, so these characters also follow this aesthetic. They're all very cute. There are a few that are, I guess you could say, they're kind of ugly, but at the end of the day, all of them, they're very expressive. They all seem to have their own personalities. And like you said, everything on the island is very rounded. It's very adorable looking. I personally hate the camera with a passion. Like I said, love hate relationship, guys. I love this game, but I hate it too. So I really dislike the camera because the top-down view. I mean, it's great for most of the time that we're playing, but then sometimes I just kind of like want to see what's right ahead, right? Like I want to see what's in front of, like, I don't know, like 20 feet in front of me, rather than just like what's right here, right? But I mean, we were talking earlier about how there could be a reason behind that, right?
And I do feel there is one, from at least from a UX standpoint. You know, it all depends on what are the drivers we want people to be experiencing? What are the emotions we want them to go through? What are the motivations we want them to go through? If all I'm seeing on the screen is very immediate to me, it feels like it makes my decision making a lot more clear and a lot more straight to the point, rather than, and we talked about this before, like a game like Skyrim or an open world game where it's like, okay, now you're in the world and go for it, and you're just like, what do I do first? Whereas this game, everything is within my view, and within this little area. It just makes decision making so much easier. The other thing I wanted to mention, and let me see if I remember. Oh, never mind, I forgot. But from a UX standpoint, one thing I do like this camera view. I don't like it when when the player's walking towards you, or the character is walking towards you, and you're trying to see like maybe what's 10 feet in front of him. You kind of have to guess a little bit and try to remember the layout of your island or where you are, and what's going to be like right ahead. Otherwise, you end up smacking into things, or you jump off a cliff. Well, you can't jump off a cliff in this game.
But if you could, you definitely would.
Yeah.
Sure.
If anything, that could be like a little bit of an issue. But everything else is kind of like just designed to make sure that, like, again, all your actions and decisions are very purposeful to the immediate area. And then that sort of curved feeling of the island itself, like almost as if you're on a globe, is what pushes you to explore a little bit more if you want to.
Yeah, I really like your your take on that, because it makes me a little bit less mad about the camera.
Okay.
Because the thing is that, okay, so I get it. Like I think you're absolutely right? Like the effect that having this camera view has on the player is precisely what you're saying, right? It's like, this is what I have in front of me. The rest of the island does not exist, even though you have like this. I mean, the island is small, but when you started the game, it just feels like it's huge because there's a lot of unexplored territory, and the island, because it's empty, it feels like it's bigger, right? As you start designing each space and you put things on it, then suddenly the island becomes like tiny, because you want to do, I don't know, Disney World on your island, and suddenly you realize that you can't because it's too small. But it makes sense then for the camera to have this function where that way I don't get overwhelmed with all the things that I could be doing, but rather stay focused on what I'm doing, which also kind of like goes with the whole, mindful. This game is about the details. This game wants to keep you focused on the actual playing the game rather than any other aspect. That being said, however, it really pisses me off when I'm like, I have a grove. I have a grove of like fruit trees on my island. And the thing is that they are at an acceptable distance from each other, but they're too close, or so they're not too close, but they're close enough so that I can't really see the fruit when it falls, what's on the floor, because of the top-down view. So I have to, if I want to make sure that I actually picked up all the fruit, I have to either just, I don't know, cross my fingers and be like, oh, I think the fruit is here, or actually be changing the camera angle, which is, it's an annoyance. I feel that it's an annoyance that maybe could have been avoided, but I am satisfied with Coraly's approach as of the why this camera is this way. So it's fine. I'm not gonna complain about it.
Okay.
It's cool. It's cool. It's cool.
And now as I'm seeing like this character kind of building things and crafting things and everything, I don't want to talk quite about the crafting mechanic, but I do want to talk about the tools that the game gives you, apart from like the camera and just like different things that you can go fishing and all this stuff, but also this right here, the inventory system, and how it's actually really limited. But I feel like that might be a good thing for this game. For a game like this, where every action is so purposeful, again, and every action has a meaning to it, it's important to make sure that you have exactly the tools that you need in order to stay on task and stay focused on the thing you actually want. once you start expanding an inventory system to include like multiple tabs or include just a giant list of things, you start getting a little bit in the weeds, and you start like kind of getting off task, and you start like hoarding things as well, which I feel like this game, it is a collection game, but it doesn't seem to be aimed as a hoarding game per se. Like, yes, you can collect bugs and kind of keep them around you inside your tent or whatever, but that really isn't the way it was meant to be designed. Or at least I believe it isn't. So you have this inventory system, and we talked again about this earlier, how a lot of games that are more open world, or even like games that are about like crafting, like Minecraft, and you have like just multiple resources all over the place. It almost feels like a Cheesecake Factory menu.
Yeah.
Where you just have pages and pages and pages of like, I just want to eat something, and you're just presenting me way too much information, and I can't make a decision. So we get into this sort of analysis paralysis of like, what is the thing I should be doing? What is the thing that I should be accomplishing to get to my goal? And the fact that this game uses a much smaller inventory system achieves that even better. It's like Cheesecake Factory versus a local shop that sources everything locally and has a much smaller menu, but it's quality over quantity a lot of times. And you know exactly what you want off that menu, and you achieve your goal. I got something to eat, and I didn't spend 20 minutes on the menu trying to figure out what I wanted to eat. And I think this game does that very successfully, and sees that through.
Yeah, I think that it does, but it does it with the very specific tools that it gives you, like the bug catching thing and the fishing rod and that sort of thing. When it comes to the collecting aspect of it, though, I do agree with that. Because there's a limited inventory, there's just so many things you can hoard. I mean, right now I have unlocked 3 rooms inside my house, and I think my inventory is up to 400 items. But I mean, yeah, there is a lot of space in that inventory, but not nearly enough space. Like, there are so many items in the game that that's not nearly enough space for you to keep everything you want.
So then it sounds
Right?
like there's two inventories. Then there's the immediate one that you have with you always as you're walking around, and then there's the one that's inside your house or your tent or your apartment.
Yeah, so that's the motivation for you to expand your house, or at least it was the motivation for me, because I don't want to owe bells to Tom Nook. I mean, if it was up to me, that would still be a 1 bedroom apartment, okay? Um, but the upside of upgrading your home is actually the fact that you get more storage space. So yes, you get very, very, very limited inventory to take with you, but you can go and dump things at your house. Still, if you are a collector and you're collecting all these items that you want to hoard, like 400 or whatever the max amount of storage space is not nearly enough.
Okay.
um, because there's a lot of items, like a lot of items, and they have different colors, and I mean, there's so many items in this game. It's like absolutely ludicrous. I am not a person that collects the items in Animal Crossing. I don't like. There's a lot of people who go out of their way to get the entire collection of one set, and I think, I don't know, like they're the type of OCD kicks in if they don't have the entire set or whatever. I don't know, kitchen counters or or like bedroom set they want to collect. Um, but I don't think there is any way you'd be able to collect every single item in the game. There's just not enough storage space for that. So you do have to pick and choose
Okay.
what are the items that you want to keep, and what are the items you want to display. Because, and this is actually something I'm not sure of. because your inventory, you have the inventory that you take with you all the time, then you have your home inventory, but I think there is no limit to how many items you can display on the world. I don't think there's a limit, which is interesting. uh so so yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's an interesting design decision because again, this game is very much aimed at, completionists, people that want to get all the things in the game because that's how they measure success. That's how they measure progress in games. When I get everything, that's when I know I'm done. And the fact that this game has so many things, um, it will take people a very long time to either achieve that or they might actually be forced to just kind of like hone in on specific collections, which again kind of helps a little bit with that mindfulness aspect and technique, where it's not about everything around me. It's focusing on the thing that really really brings me joy, or really feels like yes, this is the thing that I value a lot. Um, Again, and the game seems just designed around those experiences almost.
Yeah, I think they are, and I think the community, the Animal Crossing community, would agree. I find it fascinating how this game has just kind of, the word for it would be, the word in Spanish is desbordado. I don't know how you say it in
Over
English.
Literal
Overflown.
translation would be overflow, but I don't know
Yeah,
if it has the same connotation. But yeah,
but it's like it's overflown, like the just the game space into the realms of the internet and real life, right? And the Animal Crossing community is enormous. It's huge. And I think that Nintendo was not prepared at all
no.
for that. First, for that type of community to form around this game, and second, for all the multiplayer playing gaming that will be happening within this game. Because I don't know how you guys feel about it, but going to other people's islands is a pain in the butt to me. I think it takes way too much time to connect, and then I'm gonna go into the airplane with the dodos, and then I arrive to the island. There's this little cutscene where you're actually like flying over the island, and you're just here, kind of like, okay, so
Let's take
am
a
I at the
moment.
island? What's
let me go
happening
grab.
here?
Let me
Let
go
me go
grab a
grab.
snack.
Pretty much, right? So I don't think Nintendo, again, the way that this game is being played is because of the extraordinary circumstances we're in. So sure, Nintendo knew this game was gonna be, gonna be used as a multiplayer game, but I don't think they were prepared, nor designed the game for the extent of multiplayer activities that have been happening in the game. Like they're full on GameStop. What are you doing? Think about GameStop. There are full-fledged Animal Crossing communities on Facebook where players don't just share their game information so they can play together, but they're also kind of like selling items. They're exchanging items. There have I am convinced that there's some kind of like turnip black
Black
market
market.
out
Yep.
there.
There is. There probably is. Just
So there's just all these interesting things happening in the community. What do you think about it, Coraly?
so it's interesting, and you brought up uh, earlier a question of like, at what point does the experience end with the game? You know, at this point, like, so I mentioned this in a previous talk we did for the weekly speaker series, that like I'm on TikTok now. Like I don't post anything. I just like looking at what everyone is doing. And there's a huge community that just like created their own narratives around Animal Crossing and created their own content around Animal Crossing and memeified a lot of the things that were happening in the game itself that out of context would make no sense to anyone that doesn't play the game. So it really feels like these these social features that the people created themselves that kind of exist in the game, but it's not just limited to that, has bled into the real world, really, and bled into other platforms and social media. And, to the point where, so I am a collector. Like, I play Magic the Gathering, like physical games, and I also collect Disney pins. And in one of the groups that I was in, someone was saying, hey, I will give you this really, really expensive pin, something that costs like $300, $400, if you give me your Switch, because I really want to play Animal Crossing. And that like blew my mind that it had permeated that much. And but it is kind of that feeling of FOMO, that like people want to be part of the thing that's happening right now, part of belonging in a situation where not everyone can be with each other and belong with each other. And that's been really, really interesting. That's interesting. So Luis mentioned something that I had no idea about. Animal Crossing has a very complex language system. Every spoken speech will sound different in each region. There's a video by Polygon that explains how the villager speak works. That's actually really, really interesting, and also adds to the player's experience. Again, with this game, it is all about you being able to take control and tailor your own experience on these islands. And the fact that in that region's accent just is special to you and applies to you adds to that experience. So I'm just going to go ahead and close out with a few comments before we end. They actively avoid using pronouns when referring to you. Villagers will sing whatever song is the town tune. Victor, you should play it. Like, I'm very much considering going ahead and actually picking it up myself. But yeah, what I was saying and ending with was that the game itself kind of just lets you create your own experience around what it is exactly you want on the island. It lets you cater your gameplay experience as well. And who was it? Luis mentioned that, like, when we were talking about when Blathers is talking to you and just you listening to him and you enjoying that, it sounds like actually each island has its own almost like dialect. So Animal Crossing has a very complex language system. Every spoken speech will sound different by region. There's a video by Polygon that explains how the villager speak works. So what you're hearing might be specific to you and the region that you're in versus someone else from another region. And that also affects or enhances the experience that you're going through with the game itself. And that seemed really interesting. And then the last thing I was talking about before you cut off was just like the fact that there are so many other communities that want in on Animal Crossing and will do so by any means necessary, to the point where you had mentioned some communities that, like, you can hire bouncers to not let other people on your island.
That is so ridiculous.
You can hire
I love it.
Hire people to de-weed your island. You can black market for turnips is a thing. I haven't been on it, but there probably very likely is. And also, Tinder dates are happening in Animal Crossing because people just can't go outside or can't really meet other people because it's unsafe. Social distancing and whatnot. So the fact that people are actually going on dates within Animal Crossing, it's almost reminiscent of World of Warcraft in a lot of ways, like back in the day. Like it's your entire almost alternate life, or not even to this point, but it is almost an alternate life in another game.
And it's not up to that point because the game doesn't allow it.
Yeah.
If the game had the mechanisms to like allow the player to to do that, players will be doing it. Oh, yeah. Or maybe they wouldn't have picked up the game in the first place, which is also a possibility.
Yeah. And
because
I think, sorry. And,
No,
and
you're fine.
and I think just the fact that the game is so limited is kind of what lets people enjoy the simple things about it, rather than diving too deep into it. Another thing that I just remembered, there's also been weddings in the game.
What?
There's been weddings, people who had to cancel their weddings for whatever because of everything that's happened. They went ahead and did little ceremonies inside the
That's
game itself.
that is really cute.
Um,
That is adorable. It's the type of wedding I would have. Like 100%. That's
and
really cute.
Ethan just kind of left a message. Some people mentioned that Animal Crossing speech is real words and letters, but simply sped up. Not 100% sure about such a theory, but it makes sense in a way. The only thing I remember a little bit was when Isabel is, and the reason I know this is because there's like a whole TikTok thing around it. There's one point where Isabel is like doing karaoke or something. She's singing, and someone actually found the lyrics to it, and they were able to kind of follow along a little bit with the lyrics themselves while she was, singing. But when you hear it, it doesn't really sound like words. It just sounds like noises, very cute noises, very cute little sounds, very cute little clicks and whatnot. And I think that's okay if it doesn't sound like words.
Yeah, and it's still adorable, and that's all we care about. So that's fine. They don't they can be saying gibberish, and no one would care. But I do, like I said before, I do. It's for me. It's extremely satisfying to listen to characters like Blathers and almost be able to understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
It's like the first and the last word. It's like, yes, that sounds like this word, and I think that's incredibly satisfying. But it's not. It's definitely not every character. Is maybe Blathers. I don't remember. I don't really talk to Tom Nook because I owe him money.
Everyone avoids the debt collector.
So yeah. So unless I have already paid off my loan, I don't really speak to Tom Nook. So I don't know if he's like, like Blathers, but I speak to Blathers every day. And every time I always turn up the volume because even though he says the exact same thing in the exact same order every single time, I find it oddly satisfying and almost comforting to listen to him and being almost able to understand what he's saying. I don't know why. And I think that Animal Crossing is the type of game that really reminds us because this game has no hard goals. It has no like narrative other than the crappy narrative I was talking about earlier. Like the whole
But you are you
like,
are determining your own experience in the game.
yeah, exactly. But because you're determining your own experience, you're building your own narrative, you're actually deciding the game that you want to play, right? Because of the things, I think Animal Crossing is one of those games that really reminds us that what's important is not winning the game, is not beating the game, is actually just playing the game. And at the end of the day, I think that's what Animal Crossing is about. It's about taking the time out of your day to sit down and play Animal Crossing, right? So unlike something like Final Fantasy, the remake, where you're probably just gonna sit down and go through the narrative and actually finish the game, according to Nintendo, we're gonna be playing this game for a few years at least because they have all these updates planned out for the game. And I think there will be an event tomorrow. Like Tom Nook tweeted, okay, guys, he sent out a tweet and he said that there's something going on tomorrow on May 1st. Okay. And it won't be Justin Timberlake saying it's going to be May.
It won't be like just like a bunch of ramen all over the island.
I mean,
Because
I don't even, it's like, but yeah, it's like endearing. It's endearing, delightful. It's amazing. I hate it, but I love to hate it, and I'll keep playing it for sure. So
Awesome. All right, so we are at time. Shirley, thank you so much for joining and doing this game breakdown with us.
Yes, so much fun.
Yay. For those of you that are listening in, we'll give you a couple of minutes to go ahead and put in some questions. We can cover them kind of online here or later on. But let's give her maybe like 5 minutes. In the meantime, what is your favorite thing that you've done so far in the game?
My favorite thing in the game is still the villagers' interactions. Like, that's just hands down my favorite thing in the game. I don't think there's any item that I have collected that particularly that I would be like, oh my god, I'm so in love with this item. No, definitely not. I did capture like my first tarantula. I was really proud of myself because I captured it without it. Like I was able to capture it on my first try
Oh,
rather
nice.
than it like jumping on me and biting my face off, which that's the theory that I have that happens when the tarantula bites you. I kept that tarantula for a while. I was really proud of it until I realized what the strategy for capturing the tarantula was. It was like, oh well, it's not that meaningful.
Not anymore.
So whatever.
Like one thing that I really liked, again, I haven't played, but one thing I saw was actually the aquarium in Monterey did a sort of tour of the museum in Animal Crossing, and I thought
That
that
is
was like
amazing.
the cutest thing ever. And there were oarfish in there, and I was like, oh my god, they have oarfish in this game. That is so like obscure.
It is. It is because oarfish. I learned that oarfishes
Oarfish.
that the oarfish is a thing through a Discovery. I think it was a Discovery Channel documentary, and the fact that they have washed off the coasts of I think Japan like once in a while. They just wash off the coast and they're dead, and people are like, "Oh my god, marine monsters!" No, it's an oarfish.
Yep.
It's an oarfish.
It's just a
Yeah.
fish, guys.
It's the thing.
Luis is asking if you've made an art piece.
I have not made any type of art, even though I do realize that the game has this entire system for you to create pixelated art in it, which I think is wonderful because there's a lot, you can really see a lot of people's um, creativity shine. Uh, but I have not even explored that feature yet. I definitely will though, because I pixelated art is something I want to learn. Um, and I think this is a great way of introducing, like, I was gonna say kids, but 33 years old right here, and I'm in love with this game. But it's a really good way of introducing people to pixel art and like how to create it and kind of like get people excited about it because then you can just showcase it in the game, and I think that's pretty cool.
And one thing that I had remembered seeing something on the news and I was looking it up right now. I think there's actually been outfits that people are making based on like actual labels, or I don't know if there's actual crossovers that are happening with recognized labels and Animal Crossing.
There people have created like complete outfits for other Nintendo characters. Like I've seen people with Princess Peach dresses or Zelda dresses, or kind of like Link outfits, Mario as well. I've seen people make that they've made the dresses from Sailor Moon.
I've
Uh,
seen those.
all of the Sailor Moon dresses are out there somewhere out there, and I mean I think that's awesome. Like people are creating these things, and the best part of it is that you can share it with others,
Yeah.
right?
And
And
they
I
can
think
wear your things too, right?
yeah. And I think that is key in all of this because I remember very clearly, well, back in the day when I used to play The Sims, and I'm talking about old school Sims, like Sims 2. Like so over 10 years ago. Oh my gosh. So a long time ago. playing Sims 2, and it got to a point where I've always enjoyed The Sims, but in The Sims 2, you couldn't, like back then, streaming and sharing things over the internet was not a thing, right?
Nope.
Um, so there would come a point where playing The Sims, I felt like what I was doing didn't have any value because I couldn't share it,
Mm.
right? It's like, okay, I'm doing this for me, which is great, but it would be better if I could share with other people, which is why then I moved to World of Warcraft and didn't come out for 10 years. Uh, but then, but so it's the fact that you're able to craft items and like custom items specifically
Mm.
and share it with others, the fact that you can record, even if it's 30-second clips, which is what the Switch allows, and then share it with others. And then you have TikTok that really lets you take your content from Animal Crossing and customize it and share with others,
And
makes
create
the
your own
entire,
narratives with it as well.
yeah, it makes the entire like um the entire experience of playing Animal Crossing, it turns it into that, into a full-on fledged experience. Because then you don't just have access to the game, you have access to all the custom made items, and you also have access to the culture that is
Mm.
being created around Animal Crossing. And you're able to get all the references, and you're just like you're part of this little cult that that worships Tom Nook,
Uh,
or maybe doesn't worship them, but definitely owes him money. So, yeah.
all right. So with that, we're gonna we're gonna end. Again, Shirley, thank you so much
No,
for
thank you. I've had a blast, and you're awesome. So
yes.
thank you.
All right. We'll let others know what next week's weekly speaker series is going to be. We're kind of a lot of times making this up on the fly and seeing who's available, but we will update you guys probably on Monday. So keep an eye out for that. And I hope you all have an awesome rest of the week. Stay safe. Play some Animal Crossing, even if it's just for a little bit. And take care.
Yes. Take care, everyone.
Bye.